Okay, Ryan, Oregon currently has the number one high school recruiting class for 2026. It's towards the end of February. So it's really early. Visits are still being lined up, not even taken. There's a long way to go. But by any account, you'd have to say that Oregon, seeking to bring in its third straight top 10 class under Dan Lanning and his staff, is off to a very good start. But you've got programs like Illinois in the top 10 at the moment because a lot of kids just haven't committed quite yet. So, what do you make of where Oregon's class currently sits, and what does it take to stay in that number one ranking or close to it as the recruiting cycle progresses?
For them, it's one of the more unique scenarios. It's getting kids in for junior days. Those are unofficial visits. And a lot of the kids they recruit, as you and I talk about a lot, are from far away. You really solidify your officials by getting kids on campus early. If they do that, especially with the California kids, modern day, and all up and down the coastline, they can do that. They can be right there. They've got a national name now. They were ranked number one for a lot of last season. I think they're going to surprise some people with some of the elite recruits they get down south, Texas, etc. I don't think they really got to change their philosophy much, if at all. Now they're just going to have more success by sticking with what they already did because they won on the field last year. Don't fix what is not needed to be fixed. They're in a great spot. Just keep chugging on.
How much does a kid, and maybe it varies from recruit to recruit, but on-field results, what does that mean? What does that do for a program's recruit? Because the last impression everyone has of Oregon football, of course, is the Rose Bowl, right? Ugly disaster, very bad, ugly, and you throw out mentally, at least a lot of fans do, the Ohio State win, 13-0, Big Ten champions. All that gets tossed aside while you focus on, well, what happened in the postseason. But all of that, the regular season wins, the postseason results, what does that do for a team on the recruiting trail?
Well, it is an odd season because they started so hot and finished so poorly, but I think they kind of showed. They beat Penn State. They beat Ohio State the first time they played. Nobody knew what they would do in terms of adapting to the Big Ten and the physicality and all that, and they hit it right on the button. So I think that will help them. Now, nobody beat Ohio State in the playoff. Got to remember that. They won the title, so they were just par for the course. And furthermore, I mean, it wasn't like they were as bad as like Tennessee. The kickoff started, and it was 21-0. That game was even worse than the Oregon game, probably.
Yeah.
That game was bad. So I'm not too worried about it. They're going to be fine. And again, Oregon is a really fun school on the recruiting trail because you hear about them all the time. Kids everywhere are fascinated with the uniforms and all that stuff. And the easy sell, this is something that's very traditional. You're the next guy to get us over the top. That's what they've sold forever, and it's kind of working. I mean, they're a top 10 program any given year. If they're outside the top 10 this year, I would consider it a disappointment at season it's in. Would you disagree with that? They can
No.
happen if you lose your quarterback. But.
No, once the playoff expanded to 12 teams, which as a college football fan, I was against. And, I actually said at the time on this show, well, it's great for Oregon, actually, because they'll get into the playoff every year. But now we look back at the 12-team playoff and go, yeah, the 14 playoff stung for Oregon. If you'd had a 14 playoff last season, Oregon would have been the one seed. I think Texas would have been in. I think they probably would have put Notre Dame in. Or, sorry, not Texas. Georgia would have been in. Notre Dame probably would have been in. And then, I don't know. It would have been really fascinating. But I think
Ohio State wouldn't have been in.
I don't think Ohio State would have been in. Even though they beat Penn State head-to-head, they lost that game to Michigan. I think it would have knocked them out of the playoff, and I like Oregon's chances against literally everybody else in that playoff field, including a quarterfinal team in Boise State, who they beat when they weren't playing well, and a semifinal team in Penn State, who, again, they didn't play great defensively, but their offense was so good that they had a 28-10 lead and just didn't give it up. So, yeah, I think that is kind of my baseline. That is my baseline standard for success for Oregon on any given year. You got to be able to make the playoff. With the way that they recruit, the way they can bring in portal talent, they've got the finances to put together one of the top 3 rosters in the Big Ten year in and year out, and one of the 10 to 12 best in college football year in and year out. So, even though I'm somewhat down on what their prospects might be for 2025, yeah, like not being inside the top 12 at the end of the year, I think that's disappointing year in and year out. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, lose your quarterback midseason, something like that. You throw that out.
Yeah, of
But
course.
outside of that, Oregon will finish number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at worst. I think most years moving forward with Dan in charge. He's motivated. They've got a staff that recruits well. We got Lupoy, some of those guys that they're fine. The only question now is can they get that guy that gets them over the top, like a special player on offense or defense the other team can't really scheme for. That's about the only thing. Everybody's looking for that guy. That's common knowledge. This is a program that's here to stay. They have a chance to be in the national title race every year moving forward, pretty much.
The number one class they have, again, it's incredibly early in the cycle. They have 10 kids right now. Do you think if they were to push for the top class in the country, they would need 20, 22, 25? Is it a number? Is it a rating? How would that need to progress?
I think 22 is kind of the low number because some teams load up in a class. Depends on the company and how they do the rankings. They're way different from one to the other. Like the way 24/7 does it compared to On3 is very different. So that's part of it. Quality is a little bit more important for On3 in terms of per recruit. It gets a little touchy, but it's about 5 stars. And Oregon's in the hunt for a bunch of those kids. So, yeah, they can definitely finish there. I think they're one of about 6 schools that can win recruiting titles each year now. Georgia, LSU, Bama, Ohio State, Texas, probably the others. Probably got one of those schools every year unless one of the Florida schools gets it, or maybe it's possible Penn State, Michigan, or Notre Dame, but I don't think they will. So Oregon's right there. And they got, like you said, they got the greatest booster of all time to help them with NIL, and they've got people that know what they're doing in the back office. They do a good job of scouting. Top 10 class, I think, is actually low for them moving forward. I think top 8 is probably where they're going to be pretty much every year.
Yeah, number 4 last cycle, and I think top 5 caliber year in, year out is definitely on the table. And historically, you have to stack those to win a national championship. Another name just for you all to know out there listening or watching the show, Brandon Arrington, top athlete, according to 24/7 in the class of 2026. Oregon's after him. He's top 10 player overall. He's probably a corner, probably.
He could play about 5 spots, man.
Yeah.
It's whatever he wants to do if I'm coaching him.
Athlete is the right description for him. But one of you out there wanted your thoughts, Brian, on Oregon transfer running back Makai Hughes, who I think has plenty of similarities to Jordan James. A little bit of a stockier, compact built, like a thicker, more physical LaMichael James sort of runner, but definitely wants to run through you more than around you. LaMichael beat you with speed and his lateral movement, whereas James runs through your face. And when I watch Makai Hughes, I see a little bit of both. I see more explosion at the second level. I still see some physicality and primarily a between the tackles guy, but I wonder if Oregon's run game can't be a little bit more explosive with him back there than they were with James, who is just not a home run hitter.
I love Makai Hughes. He breaks a lot of tackles. He's tremendous in short yardage situation, whether it's middle of the field, goal line, catches the ball well, and he's a bell cow back. He can get you 18 carries a game and be cool. That is an NFL player, in my opinion. He'll make it to Sundays. Oregon did really good. He was one of my favorite backs to watch last year.
Why do you think he was at Tulane coming out of high school? Was he just one of those guys that slipped through the cracks?
I looked at that too because his freshman year he was good.
Yeah, really good.
And I'm like, what happened here? Because he lived right down the road from LSU. I don't have a definitive answer. That state is always good, but
right.
Whatever. Yeah, Tulane didn't screw up. I know that they figured it out. So, and now Oregon gets to reap the benefits for a year. He'll run for 700-800 yards conservatively. I don't know how many backs they want to rotate, but I would imagine he'll be the starter if I was to guess.
Oh, no, he's definitely the number one guy. My only question is whether he runs for more yards than Jordan James did last year. James was about 1,184, was the exact number of net yardage that he gained last year, and I feel like Hughes could be over. He went 1,300, 1,400 the last 2 years at Tulane. Now he's playing mostly against American Athletic Conference competition there. Now he's going to be in the Big Ten, but the AAC is not exactly FCS football or Conference USA. There are good teams and programs over there. It's I think the number 2 G5 conference